received to all of you there. I thought I'd like to do that.
Let me do a brief introduction, Brahma Tirtha Prabhu. So Brahma Tirtha Prabhu, known famously as Bob Cohen, is the second part of the conversation, Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers, with His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So if you read that book either recently or years ago, that's Brahma Tirtha. There he is in person. So Brahma Tirtha was a Peace Corps worker in India in the early 70s. He had the opportunity to meet with Srila Prabhupada. They had an exchange, and Prabhupada was so impressed with the conversation, he told other disciples, I want that to be made into a book. So it was Prabhupada's direct instruction that that be made into a book. And we've embarrassed him. He just appeared on it.
Those conversations took place in that hut.
Yes, that's where he met him, in that hut. The hut behind you, that's Prabhupada's Samadhi, still there today in Mayapur. And Brahma Tirtha Prabhu's been a member of ISKCON since that period of time. He is the co-founder with Brajvihari Prabhu of ISKCON Resolve. I know he's taken on a lot of very serious issues in his effort to work that out. He's also, I don't know the right term, executive director of the BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, based in Alachua, Florida, in Gainesville. And I know at some point in time in this presentation, he's going to want to tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there too. So, is that a good enough introduction? He also eats funny cough drops when he's online, not knowing we're watching him. That's about all I have to say about Brahma Tirtha Prabhu. Okay, thank you very much for being with us, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Excuse me, just take a little piece of ginger to get my voice back. Now I'm ready. Okay, thank you. I wish I could be there. I see.
Let me just ask, is it loud enough? Everybody can hear him in the back?
Yes.
Okay, great. Your volume is good. Your volume's good.
Okay, thank you. I see my friend Dr. Mark Swami, other friends. I wish I could be there with you. And there's a reason why I want to be there with you, and that will come out during the presentation. Without further ado, I'll screen share. Sharing is not turned on. So I need sharing turned on.
It's allowed. Just click allow.
It's you have the presentation on sex before me, so everything else after that, would be probably less interesting, I imagine. But what can we do? Okay, so we will tell me that you can see my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay, good. So, lessons from men from Perfect Questions was the topic. And what I thought I would do is present the backstory of Perfect Questions, what happened since then, lessons from Perfect Questions for the mantra retreat, and comments, discussion, and reflections. And I was hesitant for about 45 years at least to speak on Perfect Questions, because I was always afraid it would be about me, not about Prabhupada. Then when COVID came, there was a lot of demand, and Zoom, and all of us who have been around were asked to speak a lot more. Association became virtual. And then I realized that telling the story, it is about Prabhupada. It's not about me, and I need to tell the story. So, we'll go on. There's a backstory, and people ask me for the backstory, so I think I want to share it. I had an odd childhood by the mercy of Krishna. I grew up with a disability that I didn't quite know I had, but due to a major vision issue and a botched up surgery when I was 4, I became more or less blind in one eye, which means I had no depth perception. But nobody told me that until I was 18. So I couldn't play ball, felt like a spastic, couldn't catch it. If you can't catch a ball in the suburbs, you're no one. What a great blessing that was. It was a blessing of blessings. Because why? Because I would spend the time in the woods behind the home, thinking and meditating, anything to avoid having to play ball and be totally embarrassed up and down. And all kids do is football, soccer ball, baseball, basketball, you name the ball that I couldn't see. So, Krishna gave me a special blessing, and it was a blessing. And then I read the Gita, and I said, oh my God, what is this? There's something here. I saw Jayadvaita Swami in a kirtan party in '68 in the village, and there was a song sung, Hare Krishna, of course, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. It was like you hear something on the radio and you keep singing it. Then I started studying the Gita much more seriously in college, and since I was 10 years old, I always wanted to go to India. Finally, when I graduated, joined the Peace Corps, went to India, and boy, what a bummer that was. When the Peace Corps workers who I was replacing were training me in Delhi, and I had nice digs in Delhi, and they described the living conditions they lived. I said, my God, if I ever live like that, I'm out of here. And when I got to my assignment, it was nothing like they said. Obviously, it was much worse. I went to Bihar, which is kind of like considered the Bronx of India. And I was in the most backward place in the Bronx in India. It was the one place where the famous life membership Tejas went. He said the only town you could never make one life member. That's where I lived. So all my sentimental attachments to India were being broken. But it was the closest assignment to Calcutta, a 14-hour train ride, which I would do. And one time I was there, and Giri Raj was Brahma then speaking, and that was it. The first time I've been in India, many months, somebody said something really intelligent. Gave a talk in '71, which I still remember. It was so good. I said, now I want to know more. Then I went to the temple and I briefly met Srila Prabhupada. And I asked him a stupid question. And the question was this. I had just come from Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha received enlightenment, and I sat under what's alleged to be a sapling of the original Bodhi tree the Buddha sat under, and I sat there wondering if I'd get enlightenment. Obviously, nothing happened. But I had Buddha on my mind. I'd studied Buddhism in college. So I asked Prabhupada, well, why are you doing the Hindu thing? Why not the Buddhist thing? So Prabhupada answered that question in a very predictable manner. He said, so what does the Buddha say? Prabhupada never wanted to discuss isms, only philosophy. And he made that point clear to me several times. So what did the Buddha say? So I said, well, there's fourfold noble and 8 of this, or is it 8 of that and 4 of that? And I mumbled and jumbled, and finally I said, I don't know. He said, so why are you asking? So at that point, I shut up and just listened. So that was it. Then I was in Calcutta in February '72. There was a very good milkshake store called Kevinder's, which is still there. So I would take a 14-hour train ride for about 25 cents, third class, of course, get a milkshake. It was a way to do the whole thing because we're in the Bodhi. And he said, we're doing food relief for Bangladesh refugees in Mayapur. I said, what's a Mayapur? Well, it's where Lord Chaitanya was born. Well, who's Lord Chaitanya? Okay, fine. So I went up there to help with food relief, and that's how I ended up being in Mayapur. There's a postscript. People ask, sometimes you say, well, what happened to this Bob Cohen? Well, I can say in my 50 years of devotional service, I haven't had a boring day. Sure like one. But it's not. I've done Gurukula, BBT, and Super Vaishnava studies, and now the most challenging service of all, the Bhaktivedanta Institute. With that, as Anutama Prabhu has pointed out, we'll have a brief commercial announcement for the Bhaktivedanta Institute, and then we'll get into the essence of the talk.
This is when you all can go to the refrigerator.
I'll say again.
You said it's a commercial announcement, so I told this is when they all can get up and go to the refrigerator.
They very well might. I see people moving in the back already. Okay, so I was part of the original BI team in 1977. Life Comes from Life, Sadhu Damodar, etc. And the BI kind of fell into hard times and split up and all of that. And we revived it a decade ago. Those of us who were bringing Sadhuputa's books back into print. That was our mission. And somehow or other, we got the inspiration to try to get the BI going again. And this is the five of us in 1977. I'm in the middle of the 1977 conference. In 2019, we did a repeat of what Prabhupada said to do in 1976, send out letters, send us all of your PhDs. And this time we had 50 PhDs come to Gainesville for our first conference, a kind of repeat of Life Comes from Life, and 450 guests at opening night and famous speakers. So our purpose is to be an intellectual resource for ISKCON and elevate the scientific and philosophical educational standards of society. We have a wonderful headquarters in Gainesville. It used to be the home of the president of the University of Florida. After he retired in the late 40s, he was brought to India by Nehru to revive the educational system without the British. Things like IIT and all were his baby. This used to be his house. Haridanand Raj's family trust arranged this as a donation to the BI. It's our extensive library and headquarters. We have four areas we do: modern and Vedic cosmology, fifth canto; mind, brain, consciousness, which is another way of saying life comes from life; biology and evolution. We just had a major international conference on issues of evolution. And SMOVP is a science museum of the Vedic planetarium, in other words, a TOVP, and we have 4 full-time scientists developing the content for the museum. That's who we are, what we do. As a side project, we've been tasked by the GBC to get rid of this madness, and I use the word madness with no hesitation, that some of Prabhupada's dearmost disciples plotted to kill him at the very end. You've all seen these newsletters. We've been meeting with the people who promulgate that. We've hired the best toxicologists in America to put to rest this silliness. That's another side project that the BI is doing. So if you ask questions, we can answer later. As Prabhupada wanted, we're affiliated all over the world with different institutions, just not on here. We just came affiliated with the Galileo Commission, the non-materialists based in Europe, and we have groups of BI scientists that we collaborate with, and other institutions we collaborate with. The largest conference in the world is the Science of Consciousness. This is an older PowerPoint from 2024. We had 5 speakers this year. 2025, we had about 700-800 of the top people in there. Deepak Chopra, for example, is the keynoter. We had 9 speakers and 2 session chairs about the science of consciousness. These are just a sampling of some of our publications. The right publication is one I wish we never had to do, but we had to. It's demonstrating the earth is not flat, because there's a certain percentage of our dear God brothers, bless their hearts, who think the earth is flat. So we use modern science, ancient cosmology, Jyotirshastra, quotes from Prabhupada, 300 pages dealing with that. A vision of the future. We are basically primarily an educational institution. Our business is to educate and create resource materials. Our publisher is primarily the BBT. Any questions on it, you can write me. This is my contact information. I can share the PowerPoint, whoever likes it. But BIH studies, Bioacademics for Higher Studies, that was Prabhupada's original name for the BI, so we adopted that. So now the paid commercial announcement is over. Everyone can come back from their bathroom break, and we continue. The conversation for perfect questions occurred in Mayapur. Recently, Jayapataka Swami put this poster up in front of the Bhajan Kutir. The book is now in 70 languages. It's shocking to me how this happened. I don't quite understand it, but it's Prabhupada's mercy, and it actually happened. So, we'll begin with the name of the introduction in the current version. It's called A Perfectly Presumptuous Title. Why did I call that the introduction? Because when a focus group in England, non-devotees met, hired by the DBT to look at our titles, they said the title looks presumptuous. And so I wrote an introduction explaining why it's not presumptuous. And the way the title came about is after our conversation, Shama Sundar turned to Prabhupada and said, those are perfect answers. And Prabhupada said, yes, we'll make a book and we'll call it Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers. And the reason why the title's not presumptuous is that all is done in the mood of learning about Krishna. And of course I quote Gita 434 to back that up. Now we'll begin with a mystical moment. Any devotees like to hear a mystical story?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go for it. Let's give you a mystical story. This is a real, true mystical story. And I'm going to begin with the story and surprisingly end with the story. When I was studying the Gita in college, when I was up at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute Engineering School, but my real interest was in humanities. And I was taking Oriental philosophy, and Professor John Kohler, a well-known professor, was teaching Gita, and he came across one verse of Pichet Sudarshana. Now, I knew no Sanskrit at all. We were using Dr. Radhakrishna's translations. It was in English, and that verse bothered me a lot, because I was a very black and white thinker. Vietnam War bad, Nixon bad, war protesters good. I'm very black and white thinker at that time, 20 years old and all, very black and white. And when I read this verse, that even if you commit the most abominable activity, you're devoted, you're rightly situated, it sat wrong with me. It just didn't feel right. No, you're either good or you're bad. You can't be both. And I asked the professor to explain this verse to me. The only verse that really bothered me, not that it's an extremely important verse, but it was to me. And the professor gave me typical answer. It's intuitively obvious, he said, which means he had no idea. Fast forward. I'm in India. Prabhupada, the first hour of my conversation with Prabhupada was not recorded. There was a great shortage of cassette tapes, so Shama Sundar only recorded when it was really getting interesting. So the first hour wasn't, but Prabhupada knew I knew no Sanskrit, knew a little bit of Hindi, but he knew I didn't know any Sanskrit. So the first thing Prabhupada says, I'm discussing something with him, and he says, Apichet Sudachara, have you read it? That was the only verse I knew in English. I didn't even know in Sanskrit. Yes, the Sanskrit I don't know, but the English I do. And later on in Hindi, how mystical it was that the very first verse Prabhupada quoted to me in Sanskrit, knowing I didn't know Sanskrit, was the only verse I knew in English. That was a wow moment. It didn't hit me till later. And I gave a rough translation. Even the most evil man prays to me, he will be elevated. So I did know the verse. Anyway, I want to share with you my mystical moment. We'll get more to that later. And I apologize. The worst thing you can do with PowerPoints is have busy slides. But I didn't know how to present. So what I did is I went through perfect questions, and I took, I think, 15 lessons or 14 lessons, whatever, and I extracted the language, but to make it more readable, and so just excuse me, not too much text, I highlighted in yellow what's really important. First lesson, we overthink. We do as men. We tend to overthink. Prabhupada was giving an example about how you digest food and it supplies energy, and your body is made of energy, so the energy must be somebody's energy. That is Krishna. So I say to Prabhupada, I have to think about that to follow it. Prabhupada says, what is to follow? It's a fact. And by the way, Prabhupada, when he said these things, I like that the editors put, he laughs. Because what Prabhupada did, I was never uncomfortable with Prabhupada. Even when there would be embarrassing things like following the principles and having trouble with things like that, Prabhupada never made me feel belittled. I sat with him, I didn't know there were heads all the way around the door of devotees listening. I thought it was me, Prabhupada, and Sham Sundar the whole time. And sometimes it was somebody else in the room. I didn't realize the whole doorway had heads all the way around it. Prabhupada was so, his personality caught me, and he was on the elevated platform, and I just instinctively looked at his feet. Don't know why, but it's just, I did. So, Prabhupada was saying, what is to follow? It's a fact. Your hair is growing daily. Why? Because you have energy. So Prabhupada's first lesson is don't overthink. Second lesson, we need metaphors. In order to understand things, especially men, we're a little difficult. Our brains, women have their left and right brain interconnected. Their emotions and thinking are much more connected. For us, it's much harder for us to get certain concepts. So here's an example. Prabhupada was explaining that Krishna's separated energy. There are separated energies? I couldn't figure it out. Then Prabhupada gave a brilliant metaphor, like milk. It's separated energy from the cow, and it made sense. So then we need metaphors to understand. When we're speaking to a group, especially a group of men, the more metaphors, the better. We need electric examples, examples we can relate to. Yes, it's just like, I asked Prabhupada, the deity is Krishna, but only if you know the process? Just like this electric wire. It's electricity, but one who knows the process can derive electricity from it. Otherwise, Chandrasundara adds, it's just a wire. So if I build a statue of Krishna, it's not Krishna, unless Prabhupada interrupts. It is Krishna. Or you have to know the process. The electric really struck me, and that helped. Fourth lesson, more to overthink, and just try it. So I'm in my mental state going, I can only, through this, I can only feel not only God outside, but God inside. Prabhupada says, by this attitude of service, God will reveal himself. You cannot understand God by your own endeavors. If you have to create a situation, you have to put yourself in the situation which God will be revealed. It is not that by some method you can order God, come, I will see you. No, God is not your order carrier. So Prabhupada tells me, don't overthink, just try it. What's the lesson he was teaching me? Fifth lesson, most important lesson. How did Prabhupada end every single class he gave? Ask questions. So I say, should I ask you another question? I remember Prabhupada said, yes, yes. You see the exclamation mark. He's very enthusiastic. You can learn more and more. Questions and answers are required. They're beneficial to all. And of course, and then Prabhupada quotes the famous verse by Sukadeva Goswami that these questions can satisfy the self. So questions about Krishna are very good. When you discuss and hear about Krishna, that is auspicious for everyone, both the question and answers. So every time over the years I'd see Prabhupada, he'd say, so you have a question. So he wanted us to go deeper. And for men, that's critically important. Sixth lesson, put on your own oxygen mask first and then help others. Every flight attendant in the world teaches us this very important lesson. And I ran into some Indian guy who was visiting Mayapur. Remember, at the first Mayapur festival, there was only one guest who spoke English. So I guess there was a few Indians. This was a Hindu gentleman that wandered in. So maybe a few Indians, mostly Muslim villagers who didn't speak any English came because it's a Muslim area. So there was one Western English-speaking guest and about 70 devotees, all of them maybe 99% Western. And I was the only one they could preach to. And everyone was pretty anxious to preach to me. It's very hard to tell if someone had joined the movement 1 week before or in the maximum of 5 or 6 years before. So, things could be a little bewildering. And when this Indian man came, he was giving me some arguments against Krishna consciousness. And so I said to Prabhupada, boy, I did not really have to answer his arguments. And Prabhupada said, don't try it at the present moment. First of all, become convinced, and then try to convince others. You can improve the welfare of others when your own life is a success, says Lord Chaitanya. First, make your life perfect, then teach others. Very important lesson, especially for men. Because when I was there were people who were just only a weekend who were preaching so heavy to me. One devotee gave me this long lecture, because I had a little cold like I do now. And he said, if you take any of this allopathic medicine, you will go to hell. It's the worst thing possible. Then the next devotee comes up to me. Oh, I heard you have a cold. I have one too. Do you have some medicine I can have? Like that. It was bewildering. The only real adult there, but he was, I've seen him for a while, was Prabhupada. But there were others, turns out, mature people like Yadavara and Shaka and Kirirash and others. But it was hard for me to tell who was who. Seventh lesson, very important lesson. Krishna consciousness is a gradual process. I went through the database and I counted how many times Prabhupada said it. I stopped at 150. So I was saying to Prabhupada, I don't know if I can do all this. You know, so much cultural change, lifestyle change, blah, blah. Prabhupada said, you can do as they are doing. They were not pure at the beginning, now they are pure. You can become pure. It's a gradual process. And sometimes we think we get pure devotee syndrome. I don't know how many times I've seen devotees get initiated and the next day they, as we used to say, bloop. Because we always have to remember it's a gradual process, like learning how to walk. And we're going to stumble. And Prabhupada is very clear about that to me. Eighth lesson, stick to it. So I say to Prabhupada, well, I have a foolish question. Prabhupada goes, not foolish. I don't say foolish, but imperfect. So I tell him I like the devotees, they're cool, but I don't know if I can do this. And maybe the best I can do is come closer to God, and the next life we'll get a better life. And Prabhupada, to my utter surprise, was very good enthusiasm. And Prabhupada said, no, just follow their footsteps. Your desire will be fulfilled. Again, gradual process, just stick to it. Ninth lesson, humility is required. So I become vegetarian. When I saw Prabhupada, I boasted, I'm vegetarian. Prabhupada, so is a monkey. So is a pigeon. So what? Prabhupada was so unimpressed when I declared I'm vegetarian. So gave me a lot of humility at that point. I was kind of boasting, you know, I'm not cool, I'm vegetarian. Prabhupada really didn't care. 10th lesson, probably the most important lesson. I'll tell a little story first. After I met Prabhupada in Mayapur, I was in Calcutta some weeks later, and Prabhupada was there. So I went to see him. And there's this Prabhupada and me. And I told him, I'm bewildered. I said, I'm really trying. I got so many instructions in Mayapur. As I told you, there was just one person to preach to, and there were 70 preachers, and they want to practice. And you know, there was like when you go to a certain store, they have a ticket machine. You take a ticket, it was next in line. I swear somebody must have a ticket machine there. And so everyone was telling me what was most important to them: getting up early, taking a cold shower, reading books, chanting, whatever. Everybody told me was most important to them. So I wanted to ask Prabhupada, what's really most important for my Krishna consciousness? What really counts? And Prabhupada said to me, good association. He repeated what he had said when we were in the Bhajan Kutir. So I told him when I'm back in Bihar and I'm with my Peace Corps workers and we're fighting mosquitoes, we didn't have electricity or anything. I mean, we were very austere. You know, and they said, well, let's get stoned. I said, well, why not? We'd be swatting mosquitoes. And Prabhupada then said, you have to live with us. Then your friends will not ask about marijuana. Keep the association of devotees. And I've always made that my motto since. The two times Prabhupada told me that instruction, as I said, when I met him in Calcutta. Afterwards, he told me here, he told me later on in New York. And I always said that's the most important. That doesn't mean for me, association doesn't mean somebody has tilak in the dhoti. It means, according to Rupa Goswami, associate with those who I can trust and can trust me. That's what it means. So just follow the Upadesha Rupa says. So it's probably the most important lesson for Krishna consciousness. 11th lesson. Do not ever live. So the most amazing devotee I ever met was the wonderful Yamuna who sings the Govinda prayers every morning. And you'll see why the dog is there in a minute. I'll explain that. So Yamuna was the most heartfelt devotee I'd ever met. She was just miraculous, radiated love. So it was Gaur Purnima night. There was no electricity, just a full moon. And Yamuna walked up to me. I'd already spent 2 days speaking to Prabhupada. Basically all day. I was still serving prasadam to the Bangladesh refugees. It was just after the India-Pakistan war. Thousands and thousands of refugees were serving khichdi. But Prabhupada, somebody would come running, Prabhupada wants to see you. And I would leave the line and go see Prabhupada. This went on for 3 days. I didn't realize how special this was at that time. But I knew it was special. So Yamuna comes up to me with tears in her eyes. Just tears. She says, you're so fortunate. Prabhupada's giving you all of his attention. I mean, by 1972, Prabhupada was in a bubble. He didn't make devotees personally anymore. Those days were over. The movement had thousands of devotees. And here I was getting all of Prabhupada's attention. She comes to me, you are so lucky. You are so fortunate. And there were tears in her eyes, glistening in the Gorgon in the moonlight. And oh my God. And then when she left, I went behind the pandal into the dry rice paddies, collapsed, and just started crying. My God, what's happening to me? Am I going to lose all my hair? And an odd fellow like this, what's going to happen? So the next day, when Prabhupada called me, I was very scared. And I said, Prabhupada, I have to leave now. Actually, the Peace Corps, I was so remote where I was. The Peace Corps never visited me when I was there. They had no idea what I was doing. They didn't know if I was dead or alive. So I could do whatever I wanted to do. I was just in-service training for teachers. So, but I said to Prabhupada, oh, I got to go back to my teaching. I'm Prabhupada goes, don't talk L-E-A-V-E, spelling words, talk L-I-V-E. So I say, if you tell me to stay, I'll stay. And then Prabhupada said the most amazing words to me. And he said it with such affection, yes, you're a very good boy. At that point, I became his dog. And he said, just like you say to your dog, good boy, good boy. When he said you're a good boy, I knew I was his dog. And our conversation got much more serious after that. I was no longer theoretical needs. It was learning how to be a devotee. So the lesson is don't ever, ever leave, but live. And Prabhupada amazingly spelled that out to me. 12th lesson, be kind to Prabhupada. I asked Prabhupada humbly, I said, do you feel disease and sickness? Yes. But I was thinking, if Prabhupada's above karma, why would he get sick? And Prabhupada said, well, I've done something sinful. I've made too many disciples. Chaitanya said, don't make many disciples. But for preaching word, to expand the preaching word, to accept many disciples, and therefore I get some reaction for making too many. And I didn't know that. When Prabhupada said to me, I said, well, that's interesting. That answered my question well. That was the shot heard around the world in the movement. That shook up the movement. I wasn't part of the movement. I didn't know it then. But my gosh. So, lesson to men, be kind to Prabhupada. We're almost done, but 13th lesson to men. Do not be foolish. So Prabhupada, I'd asked Prabhupada something. I didn't put that here. So, as long as you're in the true world, you cannot neglect physical laws. Suppose you're in the jungle and there's a tiger. It is known that will attack you. So why should you voluntarily go and be attacked? And what brought this up is I said to Prabhupada that some of the devotees are saying anything that's prasadam I should eat. But some of the prasadam was like so hot it burned my guts out. And I don't know if any of you know this, but did you know Lord Chaitanya never ate a chili? Can somebody tell me why I know Lord Chaitanya never ate a chili? It's not in the CC, it's not in Chaitanya Bhagavat, but I know it to be a fact. Can somebody tell me how I know that? Come on. I can't hear. Say
Say
again.
louder, Prabhu.
Perhaps based on the year that they were introduced into India.
Well, I didn't hear. Maybe somebody near the microphone can say.
I said perhaps based on the year that they were introduced in India.
Yeah, there were no chilies in India. They came from the New World. There were no chilies. I mean, I'm not saying chilies are good or bad. I'm not making a moral issue on it. I'm just saying there were no chilies in India. So devotees saying anything offered to Krishna you should eat. And Prabhupada basically said to me, well, you're not Lord Shiva. He can give you poison. But you cannot neglect the physical laws. So you have to act practically. If you're a pure devotee on a super platform, you can do it. But if not, you have to be practical. I'll tell you a personal story that way. I had a little small putt-putt motorcycle on 40cc, very small, very slow, 35 miles an hour maximum. And I would use, because I was an itinerant teacher, to visit these remote villages. So I asked everybody, and now this is Jharkhand forest, the same forest where Lord Chaitanya went, and they asked with the tigers. Of course, I didn't know that then. And I said, well, how do I get to such and such school? And they said, well, you go down this road, then you see the big banyan tree, there's a dirt road, you make a right, you go down there, and you'll see something else, make a left. I said, okay, because there were no road signs, no maps, obviously no GPS. And I said, well, how are you going there? He says, I'm going on this little motor. And he says, don't do that. I said, well, the train will take me all day. I have to take 3 trains so I can get there. And a half a day this way. He said, don't do that. There are tigers in that woods. The same tiger Lord Chaitanya danced with. And if you go through those woods, the tigers are faster than your little putt-putt. So I took the train. So That's a true story. So the story Prabhupada told me here, by then, I understood that because that incident had already happened with me. And in the same forest where what you're talking about. So I understood Prabhupada's point very well. 14th lesson from men. Do not imitate. Again, we're continuing the story about the prasadam. And I'm saying I can't eat certain prasadam. A devotee should not be a foolish man, Prabhupada says. So a devotee knows his position, is intelligent enough to deal with others accordingly. So don't imitate a perfect devotee. It's really continuing the same story and eat everything. So 2 lessons from the story. And 15th lesson from then, get knowledge. So I asked Prabhupada, can somebody cannot really be honest without knowing God? I was challenging Prabhupada previous that. Let's say, couldn't somebody know God without, let's say somebody is just good. They don't steal, they behave properly, they do good things. Basically, I was taking the humanist argument. And finally, Prabhupada gave some responses. I said, so somebody cannot really be honest without knowing God? The Prabhupada said, yes, because God is supreme proprietor, enjoyer, and friend. So Prabhupada made the point that the most important thing is, to me, is to get knowledge, get understanding. We talked about that more. We'll get to that. Almost done, by the way. The 16th lesson, again, the mystical story. This is the very last verse Prabhupada quoted to me in Perfect Questions. And what was the last verse? Apitetsu dakshana bhajate mam anyapat. The same thing, even one commits the most abominable activities, he's worshiping sincerely, he's saintly. That was quite amazing. Because what happened is Giriraj Brahmachari then, Swami now, had come into the room, and he told Prabhupada that people tried, but tried attentively, they just can't do it. Prabhupada said, well, it's not their fault. Suppose you're trying to do something, but due to inexperience you fail. That's not a fault. Just keep trying. And then Prabhupada quoted this verse to me. So, final lesson from men, and again we're going back to the point from the prior slide, first knowledge. So I had written Prabhupada a letter, and he wrote me back, and here's what he wrote back to me. One makes his advancement by voluntarily giving up attachment. Therefore, any man with a good scientific and philosophical mind, like your good self, must first appreciate what transcendental knowledge is. If you get knowledge, automatically austerity will come, and then you'll make spiritual life. And that was my question. Do I do the austerity or the knowledge first? And for some people, by the way, it may be the austerity first and then the knowledge. But for me, because I was educated, or maybe on the mental platform, who knows, Prabhupada said, first get knowledge, then tapasya would come. Therefore, read my books daily as far as possible. And, so important, understand the subject matter from many different angles of vision by discussing it. And this way, you'll gradually be convinced that by your sincere attitude, you'll make progress. And I've written Prabhupada, but I have faith in him. And he said, yes, having faith in me is the first and only requirement for getting wisdom. So first we have faith in Prabhupada, that we're going to listen to him. Then we get knowledge, and then we get austerity. And that was the final lesson. So with that, I will stop the share. So these are 15 lessons from Perfect Questions from Men. Little commercial announcement about the Gita, about the Bhaktivedanta Institute. Do anybody have any questions, comments, reflections, or as Anutama knows, I'm going to say good jokes for the day to lighten things up?
We have half an hour for questions.
I know.
They have to be perfect questions. That's the question.
I know, I tried to, I tried to limit my talk. I didn't know how long my voice would last today, but so far it's working.
Yeah, we can hear you clearly. Okay, questions from the audience here?
Any questions or comments on it? Who in this audience has distributed perfect questions?
Who's
Raise your
distributed?
hand if you've
There's
distributed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 7 hands went up. 8, 9.
Okay. Who in the audience has read the book?
A lot of hands went up. Probably
Okay.
25.
Who in the audience was at the first book they read?
1, 2, 3. Very proud hands went up. They went
Maybe
crazy.
they can share their impressions reading it.
Drona.
Or what impression it had on them.
Well, Drona, then who else? Mohammed? You didn't know.
It was 30 years ago.
It was 30 years ago and he just had lunch. He's not sure.
My first impression of it was that I enjoyed the conversation, and in reading a spiritual text, I was never used to hearing a conversation, and that made it very personal. It got to know Srila Prabhupada, and the philosophy it was, for me, I mean, it led to more questions, but it was the beginning, and it made me read more.
And then Pearl.
Okay, good.
There's
Any other?
you want, yeah, 2 more.
First book?
2 more come. We're just moving the microphone around.
Well, it was my first book as well. When I came across the Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers book, I picked it up because it was really small. And I have a habit of starting to read a lot of books and not finishing them. So that was one of my biggest motivations. And once I started, I just couldn't keep it down. I finished the book the same day I picked it up. And then I was gifting those books to a few of my friends, and even at the temple bookstore, if I would hear someone talking about selling a book, I would always say, that's a great first book to begin with.
Wonderful. There was one more hand? Vrindavan, was it? Vrindavan? I think Vrindavan. Where were you when you first read Perfect Questions, Perfect Answers?
London.
In London.
I also had actually a similar kind of experience when I started reading that book. I remember I started perhaps around 4-ish. I finished that book in the morning, so to say. So throughout the night, actually, I read that book. And after reading that book, gave me a sense of, shall I say, impetus of reading Bhagavad Gita. It's like I really wanted to know more about it. So it encouraged me to get into Bhagavad Gita. Of course, coming from Indian background, coming family from that side of the world, we are culturally Hindu. We never read the Shastra or the Bhagavad Gita to know our scripture or tradition. But that book really made me, shall I say, inspired me to know more about Bhagavad Gita and made me devotee, or trying to be devotee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's always bewildering to me how I ended up there like that. But Krishna works in very funny ways, and it was just very good fortune. I mean, in those days in India, it was very, very austere. Now when I look back at it, if I had to do it again, I'd probably just die at my age. But then, hey, people go camping out all the time, so why not? There was no facility in India to speak of, but there was much more charm than there is now. There was much more charm. I was very bewildered. I visited temples, churches, even mosques, and I would ask people, why are you praying? What do you want? And it was like, to use a modern analogy, it was like Amazon.com. What do? You give your credit card to Amazon, and you want the package delivered tomorrow, in some cities, even today. Soon people will want to order today and have it delivered yesterday, it seems. And that's what it was like when I go to a temple. And then, why are you praying? I want money, I want dowry, I want this, I want that. I said, my God, I went halfway around the world, got the worst case of Delhi belly, and it's the same garbage. It's the same shoot a different way. And then when I met the devotees, kind of woke me up that no, there is something really deep, deep in India. It's just covered, but it really is there. So any reflections or questions or points of discussion?
Yes, one hand's raised. Because he can't see us, maybe we can name him where you're from.
My name is Kirk Kishore Das, and I'm living here now in Moundsville. I just a quick comment and a question. I really liked your story. I never knew the backstory to it, and just the thought of you even saying to Prabhupada, I think I'm going to leave now, and him just having you stay, and everything that you've done from then until now is really inspiring. I was just thinking, like, because you've shared a mystical kind of experience, if you had that same type of meeting with Prabhupada now, what would you ask him now?
That's such a nice, what would I ask Prabhupada now? Well, it would certainly be different. I mean, I think about that. What would I ask right now? I mean, certainly I'm running the BI, so I have all kinds of technical questions to ask on things that I wish we had asked Prabhupada and didn't. But I would probably ask from a more mature point of view, what does it take to share Krishna consciousness? To some degree, in the 60s or 70s, 60s, I met devotees, 70s, it was a very different society. We could go out on the street chanting, we could do things, and the more different we were, the more people appreciated us. Now people are looking for some real intellectual answers. They're looking for some more or solutions, not necessarily an alternative lifestyle. Those people were looking for them. So I would ask Prabhupada, from a more mature point of view, Prabhupada, what can we do in 2025? What's the most effective thing we can do to share Krishna with others now? I would ask him that question. So that's what I would ask now. There are many philosophical questions to ask, true, but I'm completely convinced of the philosophy, so I can ask for fine details. But now my question would be, then I was trying to become convinced. Now I would ask, what can I do to serve in a better way? So it'd be a little different.
Another question in the back. Okay, 1, 2.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. My name is Nishang from Uniontown. My question to you is, you said that when you moved to India, it was a very different place. You had different expectations, but you had a difficult time. So after meeting, Prabhupada ji and getting the sort of, the knowledge and the learning, did you ever feel like, leaving India? And if not, what kept you there? What motivated you to kind of, stay in those times?
I didn't stay. I left. Peace Corps was about to be kicked out of India anyway. India and Pakistan had a war. And America sided with Pakistan and the Soviet Union with India. That was the 1971 Bangladesh War. It was a Cold War politics. And we were not, being an American working in India, it made us a little unpopular. And in fact, the local college had 500 students who marched to my house to lynch me. Because there was a rumor that I was a CIA spy. I was not. But I used to joke with the students. They would say, "Are you a spy?" And I would say, "Oh yeah, of course I'm a spy." I would joke, and they would laugh. And one student was there when I was joking and took me seriously. They told the others, you heard my confession that I'm a spy. So they marched to my house to hang me, and there's no place to go. It's just a small town. The police only have sticks and run. So it was time to leave. The way I got out of that is I took a piece of cardboard and wrote a sign, "I hate Nixon too," and stood on my roof and jumped up and down laughing. So they went by and cheered me and had a demonstration to kill me. And then I got arrested for being a spy again. So I said, well, and decided, but my motive really to leave at that time was different. I could have stayed. I wanted to go to India since I was a little boy. But once I met Prabhupada, I was anxious for better association. I really was anxious for good association. And I realized the association I had with the other Peace Corps buddies were mostly stoned all day. It wasn't the best association. So at that point, I submitted my resignation. And Krishna gave me a piece of special mercy again. So I went to Bombay to check out. And that was, for those of you who read Giriraj Swami's amazing book, I'll Build You a Temple. Anybody here read that book? Yeah.
About 15 minutes.
I recommend it strongly. It was total chaos. I just bought the land from Jew. There was no place for devotees to live. The apartments, we had to get all the tenants to vacate, which in India is a difficult process. So we just lived in tents on the roof of the buildings, and there was no facility at all. And it was the most austere time I had in India. So I went there. I had 3 days to leave the country after I resigned. They gave me my physical, and I went to the tour. My liver was swollen. So they said, I stay for 2 weeks. So I ended up staying at Juhu for several weeks on the roof of the buildings. And I was still very mental about things. And in the morning, I watched this ritual, which really bewildered me. People were dancing around a plant. Can you imagine that? Dancing around a plant. I mean, what's going on? So I'm watching, it's running to Mangal Arti, people are dancing around a plant. I said, what the hell is going on? I was curious. I mean, I have criticism of it, which is something I'd never come across in my life. And so Sarabi Swami comes up to me, what are you doing? I said, I'm trying to figure this one out. He says, you are like a person licking the jar of honey. You better open it. So I have to dance around the plant. He goes, you have to. So I danced around the plant, and it was totally mystical. The morning mist and Bombay and dancing around it. I realized this plant was not up there in the Tulsi, obviously. So Krishna allowed me to stay in Mumbai for an extra several weeks and experience. I watched Giriraj Swami be totally transcendental in the midst, he was president, in the midst of the biggest chaos I could imagine. You can't imagine the chaos that was Jew before there was a temple built. It was just some kind of thatched hut they built, and the neighbors, Mr. Nair, the evil guy who sold property to us and others, was having the government, bribing the government to chase away the devotees. It was just utter chaos. And two things so impressed me, that Giriraj could be so transcendental to it all. And Sarabi said, you just got to open the jar of honey and taste it. But I did want to leave India then. And Krishna gave me a special booster shot before I left to Krishna consciousness.
2 more questions. Next.
Rabbi Tirtha, Gurudas here from Denver. Good to see you.
Who's that? I didn't hear the name.
Gurudas.
Oh, Hare Krishna.
In your work at BI, are you finding that there is becoming more of an awareness from the reductionist side of material science toward more consciousness awareness? And what are the devotee scholars and what is their contribution to that discussion?
Well, in the last 10 years, there's been a sea wave of change. I put on my headset so I can hear you guys better. Sometimes there's a little echo because of the room. In the last 10 years, it's changed. 10 years ago, certainly 50 years ago, it comes from my conference, the non-physicalists ruled the way. It's changed quite a bit now. There's a Galileo Commission in Europe, which is the top scientists in Europe who are the non-physicalists. They just invited us, unanimously voted to make the BI a member of this commission. At the largest conference in the world that I mentioned earlier, the Science of Consciousness. We're a major participant. David Chalmers, who came up with the phrase, the hard problem of consciousness, he's a philosopher, New York University, is often quoted. Last year, he was a keynote speaker, and he gave this talk. I mean, there's 700, 800 of the top people in the world studying the science of consciousness. And of course, he doesn't have the answers, he admits that. But he said, I'm speaking for the 30th anniversary of the science of consciousness. But I want you to know my journey began 34 years ago. We were shocked when he said this. When the Bhaktivedanta Institute invited me to speak in San Francisco. That was a huge call out for us. And I thought that we would have baggage, Bhaktivedanta Institute, and you Google it, there are different institutes, and cultish, blah, blah, blah. But we're being much more accepted than I thought, because the idea of non-physicalism is becoming more prominent. How many of you here, I'll ask a little mundane question, are fans of Monty Python? Don't be, come on, don't be brave. The Life of Brian, come on.
A dozen hands with us.
Well, I know that, they're too embarrassed to admit it. Well, Monty Python's this very funny British group. John Cleese, who's probably the most famous Python, now goes around the world speaking about one topic only, the non-material aspect of consciousness. That's what he speaks about. It's becoming different now. But there's a problem. Where do they go? They end up in something like panpsychism or idealism. They end up kind of lost because they're missing one aspect. And the one aspect they're missing is the one that we have. Can somebody tell me what aspect they're missing? Begins with a P. Say again? Personalism. They're missing personalism. Personalism is a missing link. It's a missing link in evolution. It's a missing link for everything, personalism. So what they're often missing, the scientific community or the philosophical community, is personalism. They really struggle. There's a great series. You can Google it. It'll, on YouTube, pop up by Kandidi, who are publishing it as a book later called The Aqua Paradigm. It's 30 brilliant lectures demonstrating philosophically and scientifically that consciousness is, you cannot explain consciousness by neurons. You just can't do it, and it can't be done. It's always a blank check. Tomorrow we'll do it. Tomorrow we'll do it. David Chalmers, another famous philosopher, Nagel's the guy that came up with the term, what's it like to be a bat? Because you wonder, what's it like to be something that's not us? What's it like? He wrote a very famous paper on that. And they had a bet that 25 years ago, they bet, I don't know, a bottle of scotch or something silly like that, we will resolve the issue of consciousness. And one of them said we would, the other said we wouldn't. And they obviously did. And at the BI, we study every theory they have out there of consciousness, but it's all in the Bhagavatam. The Sangha explains it all, how to understand what consciousness is. So the problem is the non-materialists are starting to become more prominent. That's good, but the problem is without personalism, they can't get all the way there. I can speak on that for a long time, but let me give just a brief answer unless someone wants to hear more.
A question. Hare Krishna, Brahma, Tirtha, Prabhu, Gopisha Das here. How are you? Prabhu?
Oh, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I have always wondered, I thought perhaps you can answer this question. Is Juhu some kind of subtle anti-Semitic query?
Is Juhu.
Is Juhu some kind of subtle anti-Semitic query?
No, it's the opposite. It's the opposite of anti-Semitic. It's glorifying Jews. Come on. I knew that from day one. Especially New York Jews, like me.
There was another hand up, I think.
Okay.
We have time for a couple more questions, comments,
A
reflections.
few minutes, if somebody has a question or comment, if not, you have you know what Lord Chaitanya said about what true eloquence is, the truth spoken concisely, or as that great Vaishnava Shakespeare said, brevity is the soul of wit. He really was a great Vaishnava.
One question coming.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Mayank here from Halifax. Prabhu, I was wondering, like you mentioned, there's a lot of like scientific studies also going on. I was just curious, what are the current projects that the scientists are working on at the institute?
What issues we're working on, you're asking?
What scientific projects? Or...
Well, good question. One, we're designing all the exhibits for the 4-story TOVP museum, known as the Science Museum at Native Planetarium. So we have 2 astrophysicists, 1 biologist and 1 philosopher, and 1 theologian working on it almost full time. So that goes from everything from your not this body to evolution to cosmology, the 5th canto, obviously, to planetarium, up to the spiritual world. We just did a major conference, international conference on issues of evolution, Darwinian evolution. We did last year 2 conferences on cosmology and 5th canto. We have a section in India based out of Kanpur working on mind-brain interface. We have a collaboration with the University of Virginia with a division of perceptual studies. They did the famous studies, the late Leon Stevenson, of reincarnation. These are kids who can remember their previous life, and there's no way they could have known it, but they go to a village and they know everything. We have another section, 2 devotees doing their PhD at IIT in Monday, and there's this amazing ability, I'm not kidding on this one, of some kids, you can, they get trained, and it only works until the kids are 14. After that, they lose it. You put a book in front of them, cover it with a black cloth, blindfold them, and they can still read it. How does this work? We did a workshop on remote viewing, which is seeing things at a distance. All the work we do, we're built on the intellectual brilliance of Sadhguru, Dr. Richard Thompson. Of course, he passed on, but he was the genius of the BI. And we have a weekly, bi-weekly, every other week book club that met today. We're doing his Maya book, so we go through all of his books. You can always write me. I'll put my address in the chat, and I can fill you in more. Any of you who are scientists, philosophers, editors, writers, we can always use help. We're welcome to do it. We are talking about giving, we had our summer discovery series for the 2nd time this year. I put my address in the chat. My email. We have the Summer Discovery Series, which is 3 weekends of really top speakers. You know, Radhika Raman, Vijayananda Maharaj, even Harikesh gave a brilliant talk on ethics on Harikesh. So we have, we're doing another Discovery Series in January in conjunction with the North American Regional Governing Body. Jai Krishna maybe can fill you in on more details on that. So our main mission is education and research. You said we have a small team working on this poison issue, which is, I was there last month and never seen anything so absurd, but we have to deal with it. So we're dealing with it for the GBC. So these are the kind of things we do. We're always looking for volunteers' help, and I might add, we're always looking for donations. We're partially funded by the VPT, partially funded by the TOVP, and that takes about half of what we need. The rest of it I get by begging. So begging we must do. Any of you want to work with the BI in any way, just reach out to me. I'll either deal with you or I'll put you in touch with one of our associate directors who can steer you in that direction. And when you're visiting Alachua, we're in Gainesville, 20 miles from Alachua. You're all welcome to visit our headquarters. We're near the Krishna House. And gladly a person will give you a tour. I think we're almost out of time. Is there any last questions,
question?
comments, especially reflections?
Reflections on what you've learned? How about one for you? Of all the 17 points that you mentioned, is there one you perhaps would tell us we should start there, or maybe it's the most important?
Of the points I mentioned, the most important point is what you're doing today. Sadhu Sangha. There's nothing more important. I wish I was there with you. I could use your association badly. I just, unfortunately, my wife got sick with a cold, and I took care of her, and then I got sick, and so my doctor said, you are not flying anywhere. But a good association, again, good association does not mean associating with someone who dresses a certain way, or it means associating with people who you can trust with your devotional life. Remember, we are a movement of both Shiksha and Diksha. So sometimes your primary association might be your Diksha Guru. In many cases, it's your Shiksha Guru who guides you and mentors you. And then your job is to guide and mentor others. That's the purpose of our movement. And our purpose of our movement is to share. The wonderful, amazing gift Prabhupada gave us. I think, where would I be if I hadn't gone to India and met Prabhupada? I just can't imagine life without that. As I said at the beginning, in 50 plus years, I haven't had a boring day. So I wouldn't want to. We ended 4 minutes early, which is a new record for ISKCON. I wish you all a pleasant visit. I wish I could be there. I was in New Vrindavan last May in the Yogashala for the wonderful, amazing retreat by Satchidananda Swami, and I strongly recommend it. And New Vrindavan is just beautiful. Every last one of you must, it's an assignment, must walk up to Jai Krishna and say to him, thank you for what he's done for New Vrindavan. It's the best thing that's happened to New Vrindavan in a long time. And all of you must make it your personal business to thank him for what he does. Because to be a temple president in ISKCON is a thankless task. Those above you beat you up, those below you beat you up, those on the side of you, left side of you beat you up, those on the right side of you beat you up. I mean, you just feel like you're in a press, or in a vice, getting squeezed. And he's a wonderful gentleman who's done a wonderful job and a dear friend. So my personal request to all of you is thank him. And the second person you need to thank is my dear friend Anutama, who's here. He's organizing retreats and getting people to just talk to each other and getting the right people. I heard some of Raj Bihari's presentation yesterday, which was brilliant. I wish I had heard Gopal Haris this morning, so many brilliant people, how Newton gets the right people to come to enliven us all for that, again, of all the points there, the most important is good association. And the Nutama has been key in ISKCON for decades of encouraging good sadhu sangha.
And there is a whole team here. There is a whole team. We're going to do is make sure everybody knows. But of course, Bhakti Mark Swami, who's been leading the kirtan so nicely, and Raj Prabhu behind the whole scene from Toronto that keeps it right. He does all our admin work. Roger, who's down right now being initiated. Partha Prabhu has been like a pillar of this sangha, this planning for the last 2 years. Even when Canada wouldn't let him come because of, right, you had visa issues with the government, and still he was here online as you are. We had to have Partha Prabhu online with us. Brahma Tirtha, please know that this does not, we really thoroughly enjoyed your being here. This does not fulfill your obligation to physically come and be part of the mantra retreat in the future. So we'll see you in full next year.
I really want to. I appreciate that. I'm going to give one final word of the day. There's one word that men are weak on. And this is the word for the mantra retreat. And if you make this your mantra for the retreat, you'll all of us will be better for it. And the one word is, what is it again? I forgot. Okay, anyway, the one word that's most important is grateful.
Grateful. We're grateful.
Thank you very much.
Hare
Jai Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
Vrindavan.
Vrindavan Ki. So it's 4:15 now. So this is our flex period.